you recommend that we open SketchUp and try to follow along with you, or?
Ooh, yeah, great idea. If you have SketchUp downloaded, I probably should be more organized and tell you to get these programs in advance of the class. I'm going to show the tutorial, but I will record this and post it on YouTube and then link it to you guys so you can watch it later if that's helpful too. This is Google SketchUp. This is a fairly basic modeling software. It's used very widely in the States, at least I know. I know for sure you can get a free student license with your school ID. And there's a couple other 3D modeling softwares, Rhino, I'm thinking on the other ones, a couple other ones. SketchUp is the one that I know and use all the time. I actually have a SketchUp model open for work that I can show you guys, just to show you kind of like how intensive the layers can get and kind of the amount of data SketchUp can process. Once this opens, oh, okay, so we're gonna get all kinds of pop-ups for Enscape, which is the rendering plugin that Juan actually showed us a couple classes ago, and I'll show you that as well. Full screen. So when you open it, this is what you get. It's a open field, playground, sandbox, whatever, and then SketchUp will always give you a little person. This person's name is Laura. I think every time they do an update, they do a different starting person. And I think they do this just to give you like a scale so you can have an understanding of your scale when you first start. If she wasn't there, you'd kind of be a little bewildered probably, but with Laura, you can immediately kind of get in and get a sense of how big this virtual space is, which we've talked about before is a difficult thing to do. So I'm gonna close. Also, when you first open SketchUp, your user interface will most likely look different than mine. The user interface is very customizable. You can see it's kind of similar to any other design software. It kind of utilizes the outside borders of your screen space to integrate tools, settings, materials, layers, all that stuff. But I think the default is going to be different, but I'll show you how to control that. So let me close that for now, and let me start much simpler today. And I'm going to pull from our last tutorial, which was our AutoCAD. And I have, oh, I thought I did, shoot. I did a quick dimensioning of just one wall. And when you're pulling, my thought was that if you already have made a program map, you already have like dimensions written down, so then that can easily be the underlayer for your 3D modeling. So let me export this again because I don't know where the other one exported to. So I just did, sorry, that was a shortcut. I did Control P on a PC. It would be Command P, I believe, if you're on a Mac. Or you can go to this little printer icon that says plot. AutoCAD uses the nomenclature plot instead of print because it's more old-fashioned. When architectural drawings were plotted, you wouldn't really think of them as printed. And then I'm just going to drawing to PDF. And I'm going to hit preview, looks fine, print. I thought I did this already, but I guess I did not. Tutorial plan 4. There it is. Okay. So now I have that right here. So what I can do is go up to File. And by the way, this should be in the same location for everybody. This very top File, Edit, View, Camera, Draw Tools, Windows, Extensions, Help. That should always be in the upper left-hand side. And I'm going to say Import. And we can look at the supported types. You can import actually a pretty generous range of things, anything from other SketchUp files to DWG files. That's the AutoCAD output. So actually, I didn't even need to save that to PDF. You can also import raster images such as JPEG, TIFF, or PNG, or Photoshop files. So any of those will work. So we're going to go to, excuse me, folder, lectures, AutoCAD. Oh, you know what? You cannot import PDF. So let me just, I'm going to import the DWG, and that will be fine. Okay, so here's the import. See, it's pretty simple. It just imports your drawing. Something to note is that it gets rid of all the the property information. So if you remember from my AutoCAD file, this line was thicker, this line was dashed, this line was pink. So it kind of automatically strips down all that info. But again, this will depend on your file type when you import. And then also if I go back to, if I want that larger tray I had open, that's just usually called the default tray. So I'll just hit to show that. And it showed up over here. And then you can customize different trays. You can see I have tray 1, which is the one that I use. But then within window, in either default tray or tray 1, you can kind of turn on and off these major components. And each of these have different functions. And I'll go through, I think the ones I have open are the ones that I use on a day-to-day basis. So that, let's see, that's kind of the only ones that I rely on. There is this instructor, which is nice. Whatever tool you're on, you can see as I'm clicking over here in my tool panel, it's just telling me what it is. So especially if you're new to the program, that can be enormously helpful. You can see it kind of has this like great animation here and a couple operation or things to know for operation. So that's a good one that I will say that I usually don't have open. So my goal for this is to extract, or not to extract, to well, to build my apartment in 3D using this AutoCAD drawing that I already have. So I'm going to get into this here. You can see this is all grouped already. When I click on one part of it, the rest of it is highlighted in blue. And SketchUp has the same selection scheme as AutoCAD, which is helpful. So you can see if I'm clicking and dragging from the upper left, it's a solid box. And that means that to select something with this style, the entire thing has to be within that box. So now that's selected. But if you select from the bottom right and go upper left, you see this dash line. And then anything you touch, even if it's not completely selected, will be selected. So I can select just the bottom of Laura's legs, and she'll be entirely selected with that scheme. Or if I do from upper left, I have to select all of her. You guys get it. So we can also look at our tags over here, which is the equivalent of layers. We use layers in Photoshop, Illustrator, in AutoCAD as well. So tags is just like a SketchUp's equivalent of that. And I'll get into that later. But the basics are pretty similar to AutoCAD for at least the first part. So for now, what I'm going to do is just start with the rectangle tool. So I'm just going to start mapping out these walls here. So I'm just clicking in one corner and then clicking on the other corner. So you can see that made a rectangle. And I'm going to keep going around here and just filling in all of these walls. And just like I said before, these programs, there's like a million different ways to do one thing. So I'm sure if you are already familiar with SketchUp, I'm doing some things differently than you would do them. And you just kind of get a sense of how you like to work as we start to get into it. So now what I'm going to do, now that I have the major floor plan, and again, obviously my apartment is much smaller than some of your houses, so I have an easier job. But for example, I can hide this drawing underneath just to see my my drawing here. And SketchUp also does this nice thing. We've talked about line weights a couple times before, but it treats the outlines differently than edges, I think is how the words they use. And so you can see, especially if I zoom out pretty far, the lines, like this line dividing these two walls, is much thinner than the line of the silhouette. And you can turn that on or off. I don't know if it matters to you guys, but it's in the View tab under Edge Style, and then Profiles and Edges. You can turn both of them off and then have a really hard time figuring out what you're doing. Usually I have edges on only. I don't work with profiles because I find that can slow down your model a lot. So especially if you're working with the model that I showed you earlier, like the more objects you have, the more profiles it's constantly calculating, and so it can really slow down your model very quickly. So I usually have that off. But it is a nice drawing convention. So I'm just going to go through here and delete let me delete, I'm going to delete these outer walls. I'll leave these inner ones separate. And then I can go over here to the push-pull tool. And I think my ceilings are about 10 feet, I would say. So I'm clicking and dragging upwards. But similar to AutoCAD, you can also manually input information. So instead of just guessing at where 10 feet is, you can see down here in the lower right, it's giving me a distance. So as I pull and drag up, it's telling me, okay, 3 feet, 4, 5. So you can also just type in 10 and then feet. And then obviously, if you're using metric, that unit will be different, but that should kind of happen automatically when you install the software. So there's my outer walls. Boom, pretty easy. And the next thing that I want to do is make sure these stay separate from the rest of my geometry. SketchUp is kind of like a really bratty child. Like you have to be really careful with how your geometry is organized, or else, like, for example, if I wanted to say like, oh, I'm going to move this wall out. As soon as you try to move this line, it's like all the planes and edges are interconnected. So you have to be pretty specific. So what I'm going to do is select all this, right click and say make group. And that is going to enable me to do things on top of it. For example, create a floor plane without disrupting the geometry of my walls. So to make a floor, I'm just going to do rectangle, just like that. And then immediately before I do everything else, I'm going to select that. And there's also a way to select by just clicking. So if I click once, it'll select that face that I just did. If I double click, it'll select the face that I'm selecting as well as the edges. And then if I triple click, oh, it does the same thing because my walls are grouped. But for example, let me quickly make a copy. I'll tell you how I did that later. For example, if this was not grouped, I could click once to select the plane, double click to select the plane and all containing edges, and then triple click, and that will select every piece of geometry that is currently connected. And again, I know this is a lot of information to be throwing at you guys, but as you start to kind of get into it, play around with it, you'll get that intuitively. So that is another example why grouping is good, because then you can kind of, I can select the whole wall separately from the floor, whereas in this one where it's not grouped, it'll get crazy immediately. So I'm going to delete that and come back and work with this one. So, and to get into a group, you just double click that group. So I'm in this group now. You can see the walls kind of grade themselves out, and that's just a visual tool to help you understand which group you're working within. So I'll make this floor plate a foot thick just for fun. And then to show you how to do the layers, I will also do a ceiling plane, and I'll also show you how to copy. So my ceiling plane is essentially the same as my floor plane. So I'll just make a copy of that. Of course, you can do Control or Command C and Control or Command V. So I'll do that now. Control C, Command V, and that'll give me this, and I can kind of easily place it on top. But you can also do, my favorite way to copy something is to use the Move tool. So actually, let me see if this tells you. Let me go to Instructor, Move tool. That's this kind of like arrow situation. You can see, oh, it's showing us right here. So it says you can move it, and you can also use it to copy things. And it says that in the modifier keys, you use Shift to lock to the current inference direction. So that's very similar to like Adobe products. You hold down Shift and you can move it orthogonally. Control toggles copy of selection, and Alt toggles auto fold of selection. I actually have no idea what that means. I don't know. Anyways, so to using the Move tool, I can just press copy, and if you look, I'm pointing to my screen. If you look at the Move icon, you can see there's a little like plus button that pops up when I hit Control, and that's just like letting you know, hey, you're going to copy this. So I'm just going to click on this edge here, and then I can copy it. You can also lock this to axes. So for example, if I know I want it to go up, I can hit my up arrow and that'll lock it to the blue axis. So now I can only copy along the blue axis. You can also do the same for green and also for the same for red. Red being left, right, green being forward and backwards, and blue being up and down, at least in this current orientation. Okay, and I can click, there we go. This is also really useful. You can array commands, or you can like duplicate them. So for example, if I know that I wanted, if I was doing a skyscraper, for example, and I knew, okay, all of my floors are 10 feet and there's 10 of them. So I can do click here and then here. And you can see in the bottom right corner, my distance is 11. And then I can click. And then if I want to multiply that by 10, I just say, I'm typing X 10, and you can see that pop up in the distance. And then if I hit enter, you might have to do it in the operations. Sorry. Let me try again. There we go. So now you have 10 floor plates. So really quickly, you can efficiently duplicate the same action, which for this example is not particularly useful, but it does come in handy at some points. So now I have my roof, but the problem is I can't really see the interior of my model now. So what I'm going to do is create another tag or layer with this plus button, add a tag, and I'll just say this is the ceiling. And this entity info is kind of like the properties panel within AutoCAD or within Adobe products. So then I can assign this roof plane or the ceiling to the ceiling layer, and then I can turn the whole layer off with this little eyeball icon. So now I know it's there, but I just have it turned off so I can work on the inside. There's also another way you can like easily show or hide geometry, and that's just by selecting something, right-clicking, and then say hide. And then it's not gone forever. It's just like a little magician trick. To view those again, you can go to view and then say show hidden either geometry or objects. Geometry shows if you have like hidden lines within the geometry. Let me show you what I mean by that. I can make a line, and then I can use my eraser tool and hold down shift to kind of like smooth that edge out. It's not so apparent now, but when you have like curved objects, it makes more of a difference. And then I can say view hidden geometry, or yes, hidden geometry, and there's that line. But to get to your hidden objects, you just say show hidden objects, and then you get this like weird, like gridded transparency pattern. So now I can see this, right click and say unhide. So two different ways to show and hide things there. I use that a lot, so I have it shortcut to Shift 5. So if I press Shift 5, I can quickly toggle back and forth between what I have hidden and what I have not. Okay, so, oh, interesting, that underlay is showing through when I turn on hidden objects. Any questions so far? Okay, wonderful. I'll just keep chugging. So I'm going to go back into my walls, and I actually have a lofted section of my apartment. So these kind of go up about 7 feet. So I'm just using my push-pull tool, the shortcut for which is P. So I'm just hitting P, make sure I'm clicked into my wall group, and then P, or clicking over here for push-pull, and then just clicking, dragging. And I can either hit 7 feet, I can type 7 feet here, that's one way to do it. I can also just have it snap. SketchUp has some really awesome snapping guides. So I can just like come over here and it'll snap right to the other height. Makes it super, super easy. And then I also have a little, there's a tiny little plane over my door. I was just using the line tool there, L for short, or for shortcut. And then to click off of that, I'm just using space. Space is the equivalent of escape for AutoCAD. And then I'll pull that down just a little bit. And I'll do the same over here. Doors are typically 7 feet tall, so I'm going to make this 7. This is my entry door. So you can see I just made a line, which is impossible to tell just by looking at it. So I can either click around and then I can see this blue line is the extent of the line I just drew. But I can also use, if I go to my line tool, click on this pencil here, you can see the little node that it's pointed at changes. So the little red box is on an edge, the little green circle is on an endpoint, and then there's some other ones like midpoint, which is the blue circle. All of these are super helpful in modeling, and you can also change how those interact within settings, which is somewhere. I've never actually changed the settings for those because they've always worked really well for me, but I'm sure they're in here somewhere. Yeah, not sure where the settings are, but I'm sure you can find them pretty easily. Oh, preferences under window. Here we go. So I won't go into all those, but anyways, that's where you can find them. And then again, I'm just gonna make this little box over top my door. Fill that in. Again, I can drag this way, I can drag this way, drag this way, a whole bunch of things. And then typically, you'll have like lines that are made from constructing, and you can, if the lines aren't separating a plane from a different plane, you can just delete them and it will not affect your model. Just clean this up a little bit. Okay, so now I have ceiling, I have my floor, my walls, my ceiling. So that's a pretty basic, oops, pretty basic white box. That error message I just got was because I was trying to hide the current tag. You can see this little pencil tool over here on the right side of your tags. That indicates the layer that you're currently drawing on. So for example, if I were to make my current layer my ceiling, and then I draw a bunch of whatever objects, those are now automatically on the ceiling, and I can turn them, if I switch to a different layer first, I can turn them all off. Just something to be careful of when you're modeling. Make sure you don't get your layers all confused. So I think now what I want to show you is, I want to show you the warehouse, I want to show you Enscape, and I want to show you how to make a quick render. I think those three will kind of take us through to the end of class. So the warehouse is this super, well, let me back up. So SketchUp is a open source platform or program, which means that users can develop their own plugins and content. So I have a couple plugins that I use. One of them is called Solid Inspector, which helps me like delete erroneous lines or planes. Then I also have one called, where is it? It's called like Taper Maker or something. Oh, here it is, extensions Taper Maker. So there's like, you can go into the extension warehouse. I'll show you that real quick. And this just has a set of really, really useful tools, two of which I use all the time, Solid Inspector, which I believe is this one, and Taper Maker. So again, these are all developed by users outside of like the SketchUp company. And you can see the featured ones. These are like really popular ones that make your life a lot easier. So that's that. And then similarly, there's the 3D warehouse, which has tons and tons of things that people have made who have uploaded them to this warehouse that you can download all for free, I believe. All the ones that I've downloaded have been free. It's also kind of been turned into, you can see, featured catalogs. A lot of big companies like refrigerator manufacturers, if you're like a company that makes like bar equipment, you'll have someone model of your equipment, so then designers who are specifying your products can just find them on this warehouse, download them, and then it's kind of like a built-in advertisement. But there's also like people who've made like really awesome flowers. So there's a huge range of things available. So what I'm interested in is just kind of filling in some of the furniture that I have here. So just to show you, I'm just going to search for IKEA desk. I'm sitting at an IKEA standing desk. Okay, that did not bring up anything. Kind of people will name and label these models not in any specific way. So you can see like some of these are just like a product number or something. This looks similar to what I have. So click on it, it'll show you how many polygons and the file size. This is important to know just because sometimes I'll go to download like a pot or a vase or something and it'll be like 35 megabytes and I'm like, oh my God, I can't afford that virtual space. My model will slow down. So you do have to be careful on that. But I'll just download this one, seems fine. Okay, so now it pops it right into your model and you can kind of click to set it down. Sometimes they do come in out of scale. This one looks okay, but sometimes you'll import like a bowl of fruit and it'll be the size of your whole building, which can lead to some funny results. So I'm just going to move this into position. So I'm just clicking on or typing M for the move tool, selecting it, and then pressing up on my keyboard to isolate the Z axis, I guess that would be. And to get this set on the ground, I'm just going to click specifically on this foot and then it'll kind of snap to the ground as I'm moving my mouse down. This is a really easy, nice way. There's also people, there's furniture like I'm showing here. There's like curtains, truly anything you could ever want. So I'll just find a chair and I'll find a person. Actually, I'm sitting on a stool right now. This don't work. Bam. And then you can search for sitting. Look at that. Oh. Some of these are some of these 2D models have this like follow me command. So because they're flat, they like save space, but because they want to appear no matter which way you're looking at them, they like rotate with you, which it's like that thing where you have like a painting and you think the eyes are following you, but they're actually following you. So that's funny. Let's find a door. Door. Look at that, it's got the casing and everything. So not a perfect fit, but we'll move it in pretty close. Laura, we're having a party, get in here. Hi, Laura. Okay, now I'm gonna show you Enscape. Yes, so again, this is a plugin. I'm not sure if you can get this license for free. My firm that I work for pays for this, and that's this whole section, this whole tab up here is devoted to Enscape. But Juan showed us this a little bit a couple classes ago, except I think he was using V-Ray. So this is just another example. They're all kind of similar. They take the materials that you have selected. Oh, I should show you that too. And then they kind of render them with some really beautiful lighting qualities. Hopefully this won't take too long to start up. There we go. So because I have not added windows and I don't have my roof on here, this isn't a super accurate representation, but you kind of get the idea. I have some controls down here. I won't go into this too much because, like I said, I don't know about your access to this software, but I can change like the lighting conditions. Let me show you real quick how to add materials. I'll show you some of the more interesting things it can do. For example, I know if you're doing grass, let me see.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Do you know about compatibility between like Mac SketchUp files and then like if I want to make stuff on my laptop, but then I have like a PC with like a decent graphics card, which would be better for rendering, could I put it on there to render? So
Good question. I think they all, no matter if you're on Mac or PC, they save as a SKP file, SketchUp, which is short for SketchUp. And you should be able to access that on, like if you're able to run SketchUp on both computers. Is that what you're asking? Yeah, so you should be able to do that for sure. Okay, so what I just did is did some carpet. Lush forest. So let's see what that looks like. So now that material is changed in Enscape, which is cool. To further answer your question, no, you can also export in different 3D model file types. So like I just went to File, Export, 3D Model. And you can see you can save as a 3ds, which is, I think, a fairly compatible file for like Rhino. You could even open that in AutoCAD does 3D as well if you want. There's a whole slew of other file types. I think I've used STL before to like downsave models, so that one could work too if you're using a different 3D software to kind of transfer between. So let's see, for example, if I wanted to make this grass, let's see what that does. Look, now I have grass. Let me get my, oh, you can't see. I'll add a little window. So I just made a rectangle. I'm gonna use push-pull and then kind of like push to the inside, and that should delete that face. So that's a quick way to make windows. Now I've got some grass. You can also do, there's also options like water. Now I've got some water. My apartment is flooded. But you can see even in this like very basic SketchUp model, the lighting's beautiful. There's like accurate textures, things like that. I'm going to close this and just show you how to do a regular like screenshot or rendering. So there's something called position camera, which will allow you to, you can see the height offset here. So that's essentially telling the camera how high off of the plane you click on to sit. So 5, 6 is like a typical eye level. And I can just click down in here. And then using this little eyeball, I can kind of like look around. And I can also set my view, oops. I can also set my viewing angle from, or sorry, field of view. So this is something kind of cool. You can like mess with the perspective and get like crazy with it. And I can see I'm like super distorted, but if you're in a small space, it's good for capturing information. Anyways, so to export this, you can either obviously just do like a screenshot, print screen, or using something like the snip tool, snip and sketch. Not sure what the Apple version or the Mac version of this, but I know on PCs, I use a snip and sketch thing all the time. Or what you can do is go to File, Export, and just like I was showing how to export a 3D model, you can export a 2D graphic. And what is this? Sketch. One. And that'll usually pretty quickly make, it's not quite a rendering, it's not really rendering anything, but it's just taking a screenshot in a pretty simple way. Now we have, ta-da! So obviously this isn't the best. You can turn on profiles to get some of those line weights we were talking about, but the lines are like really crunchy. So a lot of times I'll use this as a basis for photoshopping. Like I'll take this very basic model into Photoshop and like apply textures to planes. Sometimes I would print this, excuse me, I'd print this and hand sketch on top of it to make some really compelling hand drawing renderings as well. So, whoops, didn't mean to stop sharing my screen. There you have it. Very basic crash course into SketchUp.